Friends, hi, welcome to day 17. I hope you're well. Today, again, we've got some pretty meaty readings, so I hope you've enjoyed them. Today, if you like, the big bits are slightly hidden away, so maybe we're not expecting them. But let's see what's around today. In Genesis, first of all, yesterday we said that Jacob and Laban's relationship had changed completely from how it was in the beginning. And so today, if you look in verse 2, Jacob, it says he realises that. He realises that things have gone wrong. And so down to verse 17, he takes his family and he goes, heads back to Isaac, to his dad. But they didn't tell Laban that they were going. Verse 19, we see that Rachel, when they left, took Laban's household gods. Now, if you're like me, you may be wondering what that's about. Truth is, we don't really know. Scholars are divided. Some scholars think that she just took them because they were of value, and so she took them to spite her dad. Others think that maybe the household gods at the time would have had value in terms of people would have put spiritual importance on them. They would have thought having these gods would have meant that they would have taken more in terms of inheritance. And so maybe Rachel took them to spite her dad just for the value. Maybe she took them thinking that she would benefit from them, and so wasn't really trusting God on that area. But we don't really know. Laban then realises they're gone. He chases them and catches them up, even though there was a 3-day between them. They have a bit of a chat. Jacob says that he's not happy that he worked for him for 20 years, but he was treated badly. But even so, God has been with Jacob in those 20 years. They agree to go their separate ways. They make a covenant to agree that Jacob will look after the family and he's not going to take any more wives. And they agree that they'll stay separate from one another. They build a pile and say they agree they won't cross that pile in either direction. It's a little bit like when I was at primary school and I shared a desk with someone. We used to draw a line down the middle of the desk and agree that our arms wouldn't cross into the other person's half of the desk. It's a little bit like that. Then they went their separate ways. What strikes me in this passage is that Jacob worked for Laban for 20 years. And while he was there, he had a bit of a tough time. He struggled. He wasn't really looked after. And as well, he didn't really hear from God during that time. He may well have thought that God had abandoned him. And so he really had to trust the promises that God had made him earlier, much earlier, saying that God would look out for him, he would be with him. Remember, when we're in tough times, we sometimes need to just cling on to the promises of God, that when life gets tough, when things get boring, God is going to be with us. And also, let's not be fooled by this whole kind of quick fix solution that we see around a lot today, or whatever you want, you can get it now. It took 20 years for God to teach Jacob some basic lessons. And sometimes when God seems like he's a long way away, actually he is at work. But these things can so often take a long time. So let's be clinging to God's promises. For Jacob, there's one crisis over, and there's another crisis just over the brow of the hill, if you like, when he's going to get back and he's going to have to face Esau, his brother. So keep reading. I very much doubt that Jacob is over the hill just yet. On into Matthew, and we see today Jesus makes some very big claims. Check out verses 25 through to 27. We see, at that time, Jesus said, "I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and learned and revealed them to little children. Yes, Father, for this was your good pleasure. All things have been committed to me by the Father. No one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and those to whom the Son chooses to reveal him." There's big claims made by Jesus hidden in those verses. Jesus is basically claiming to be the centre of all revelation about God. What he's saying is that God reveals himself in Jesus. And there's 5 little claims that Jesus, or pretty big claims, but there's 5 things that Jesus says in that passage that maybe don't jump out at us as we read, but are actually really important things that Jesus is saying about himself. Firstly, he's saying that God conceals and reveals, that God hides himself from the wise, if you like, from people that think they can use intellect to work out who God is. He's saying that God hides himself from those, and so those people are never going to get the picture. And that he reveals himself to those that have got a childlike trust. Then he's saying that Jesus fully represents God. He's saying that that he came from God, that he has God's power, he has God's compassion, and he comes with God's agenda. Then he says that only the Father, that's God, fully understands Jesus. John doesn't understand Jesus completely. The disciples don't. The wise certainly don't. The little children don't. Theologians don't. Pastors don't. We don't, however much we read the Bible. Only God understands Jesus. And there's just this sense of mystery there, that this side of heaven we're never going to know. Theologians spend so much time trying to explain or understand how to make sense of Jesus being both fully human but also fully God, fully divine. It's a bit like trying to make a square into a circle. It's never going to completely happen. We can get little glimpses of how it might work, but really this side of heaven, it's a mystery we're never going to know. Then he says that only Jesus understands the Father. And again, we can get a little picture of who God is, but really only Jesus knows. And Jesus doesn't just know most things, Jesus knows everything about God. Now picture right at the start, back at the start of Genesis, we spoke about how big and how massive God is. And Jesus knows everything there is to know about God. And then finally, because Jesus does share God's nature, and because Jesus knows everything that there is to know about God, only Jesus can reveal God to us. Jesus can show us who God is because he knows. It's a little bit like saying, I can't tell you much about Wales, or I can't show you around Wales or take you on a tour because I've never been there. But if you come to Peckham, I'll tell you probably quite a lot. And I'll take, maybe not everything, but I'll take you around. I'll show you most of what you'll need to know because I live here. I know Peckham pretty well. In the same way, Jesus can teach us about God because he knows, and he can introduce us to God because he belongs. You know, I can take you into a pub, but I can't really set you up with the locals because I don't know them. But if you come to my church, I can introduce you to people there. It's a little bit like that. So in those couple of verses, Jesus is making a massive, massive claim. And so basically, friends, if you want to see God, then look at Jesus. If you want to know God, then come through Jesus. It's a pretty final statement that he's making. There's no middle ground. There's no room for doubt there. But then after saying what he says about himself, he extends an invitation. Look at verse 28. After saying all that, he says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Jesus doesn't say, go to God. He knows that we can never find him and we can never get there by ourselves. Jesus says, come to me. Friends, if you're tired, if you're at your wit's end, if you don't know where to go, if there's just burdens on you that you can't handle anymore, Jesus says, come to me and I will give you rest. And there's no better advice that I can give you today. There's no way that I can interpret that or explain that to you. I just leave Jesus' words with you. Just recommend that you do exactly what he says. Friends, enjoy your day, and I will see you tomorrow. God bless.